Hello and welcome back to the channel where we've got more GAA coverage ahead of what's a big weekend in the hurling championships. And to the channel where we've got more GAA coverage ahead of what's a big. There's me talking in the background. No, so yes, we're back with the hurling coverage and. So we're going to talk about the hurling matches this weekend. There's 5 games, and then we're going to have a brief chat about the football. There's no football matches this weekend, but there's plenty of news with managerial changes and stuff. So we'll get underway by starting with the senior hurling championship games. 2 semi-finals this weekend. One Saturday, one on Sunday. I believe they're both at Croke Park. The first one then that gets underway Saturday 6 p.m. Kilkenny versus Waterford. On paper, maybe Kilkenny as Leinster champions might be slightly favourites, but I would call that one pretty much 50-50. And just so what's your thinking on it, Conor?
I'm looking forward to that game for a start. That Kilkenny and Waterford. I think that it'll be a brilliant game of hurling. I think the 2 games are going to be of top quality this weekend. I think Kilkenny have some super hurlers, as they always have. They're always very hard beaten. They haven't lost a semi-final since 2005 when Galway beat them. So I think that they'll be slight favourites deservedly. Waterford are going into the game with nothing to lose. They won their last semi-final in 2017. They beat Cork. They were very, very unlucky not to beat Kilkenny in 2016. I just think Kilkenny are very, very strong all around the park. They have a good goalie. Like, if you can see, I was reading there in Brendan Cummins in the paper, TJ Reid will score every free he gets. They have a super free taker. They have serious grafters all around the park. They have a good bench as well. Richie Hogan come on the last day. They don't know where he's going to start or not. And I just think that Kilkenny might just do enough. But Waterford, Desi Hutchinson's in the form of his life. Stephen Bennett is playing great hurling for Waterford in the forward line there. And if you look at it as well, Austin Gleeson, there's probably more in Gleeson. If they can get more out of him, they have a real, real chance of winning the game. But Hutchinson could be the game changer. Ty de Burke is playing very well in the back. Stephen O'Keefe, a super goalie there as well. And I just think, though, that Kilkenny might just have a bit too much. I think it'll be an absolute battle. Any team managed by Liam Cahill will bring a lot of graft, they'll bring a lot of hard work. But I think it'll go into a battle towards the end. And I just think, as per usual, I think Kilkenny might just edge it.
There's little doubt, obviously, it might be different with the current players and current teams and stuff, but obviously Kilkenny have got much the richer history. Waterford, it's been what's that now, 61 years now since they've won a hurling championship, which it's a long time for a county that certainly over the last decade or 2 decades have been there or thereabouts a lot, and probably by now should have got over the line. Do you think that the Waterford players are sort of playing with that on their back, or do you think when they got on the field that it's just it's them and the opposition?
Well, I think Gerry going into the final were unlucky not to win the final. Really, they didn't really have a good first quarter, but I think around 48, 49 minutes they missed a great opportunity. They got 2 points up, and if they got 2 points up, it could have been a different game. And then Galway kind of took control of proceedings, and they won by 3 in the end of the day. So. But ever since then, Waterford in 2018 played 4 championship games, and Munster got 1 draw, so 1 point. They played 4 championship games last year, and Munster got no points, lost all 4 of them. So I don't think Waterford have gone well. So I don't think that monkey will be on their back. It would have been nearly more pressure this year against Clare and against Cork in the Munster Championship. Well, against Cork in the Munster Championship and against Clare in the Ireland quarter final, because then they were kind of playing as a team maybe low on confidence in previous years. But I think they put themselves in a position now, Gerry, where the pressure is really not on them. They're kind of going into a game where they have a real chance of winning but under no real pressure. So I think Waterford are in a fairly good position ahead of this weekend.
Okay. Certainly, it does. It looks like an interesting game. Kilkenny got here with the late show of the two changes, obviously, and experienced players got them through Galway, which for a long time it looked like Galway were maybe going to win that one, but it brings us nicely along then to the other semi-final, which on paper again, it looks a fantastic game. Like to me, from what I've seen, Limerick look like I would say probably the best team in the championship this year, the hurling championship. But what I would also say for Galway is there's 3 or 4 players, maybe 4 or 5 players that that genuinely are probably among the best in Ireland. You know, so like in terms of individuals, I think Galway might be a wee bit stronger in certain places, but I think as a team, Limerick are the better team. So what would you think of that one?
I'm actually looking for an awful lot, Gerry. I think this is going to be a cracking game. I think Limerick, the semi-final, has been the death knell of a lot of Munster champions in recent years, ever since 2005. Really, only 2 Munster champions have actually won their respective semi-finals, and that was Tipperary in 2011 and Tipperary in 2016. Like, if you look last year, Limerick lost to Kilkenny. The year before, Cork were Munster champions. They lost to Limerick, and in 2017, Cork were Munster champions, and they lost to Waterford. Like, so, if the Munster champions do not have a good record at this stage of the competition, I think this weekend Limerick, they're kind of coming under pressure. It could be a small bit different this year with the years in it, with the whole, obviously, championship maybe it hasn't been as normal as other years, but like, if you're looking at Galway there, Galway, like, are going into this game. They were unlucky against Kilkenny in the Leinster final, the way that they kind of lost the game, to be honest with you. They played super hurling against Wexford, and they really had to dig deep to beat Tip, and they're after knocking out a very, very big team in Tip, and I see no pressure with Galway this weekend. I think Shane O'Neill is the Galway manager. He's a Limerick man, and he'll have them very, very well tuned and prepared. O'Neill is a smooth operator, very calm, and doesn't really let his emotions get to him, and he'd have Galway very, very well prepared. He'd have them playing nice, attractive hurling, and he'd have them very, very close to winning that game. But I do think Limerick might just edge it, Gerry, but it'll be a very, very close game. I'd say Limerick might just edge it. And I think if Limerick do get over this game, they have a really good chance of winning the final.
Just you say obviously you think if Limerick get through this one, they have a good chance of winning the final. Would you look at it as if Galway get through this one, do you think they'll win the final? Like I'm looking at it. I know Kilkenny beat Galway in the Leinster final, but I'm kind of looking at it and saying if I was ranking these teams from 1 to 4, I think I would have Limerick 1 and Galway 2. What would you think yourself?
Well, I think if Galway get the final, Kilkenny or Waterford will have a real chance of winning it, Gerry. Now, to be honest, like Kilkenny bet Galway and Leinster, so they have no reason to fear them. And I think that Waterford, they actually have a super record in the championship against Galway and in the league. They bet them in the league semi-final last year. I think they might have beaten Galway in the league this year as well. But Waterford, I think the only time Galway ever beat Waterford in the championship was at All-Ireland final 3 years ago, where they bet them. So I think Waterford won't fear Galway at all in the final, and I don't think Kilkenny definitely wouldn't fear Galway after already beating them. Now, if you look at it now, to be fair, Kilkenny did beat Limerick last year in the semi-final, so Kilkenny definitely won't fear anyone. Waterford lost the semi-final to Munster. I don't. This would obviously never be publicly said, but I'd say both Kilkenny and Waterford would rather play Galway than play Limerick in the All-Ireland final. I'd say whoever wins Saturday will want Galway to win, but I'd say whoever wins Saturday will go into the All-Ireland final as outsiders as well.
Okay, so obviously those 2 games, one on Saturday, one on Sunday, to decide the All-Ireland hurling final, which I think is 2 weeks away then. So the teams obviously will get the week off, and you know it's all very well worrying about the Liam McCarthy, but as anybody up here in Antrim will tell you, the real competition's in the Joe McDonagh. So 1 o'clock on Saturday. I've just seen, I think it was last night, I just seen Meath are covering this game on their YouTube, Meath and Antrim. So ultimately it comes down to if Antrim can win or draw against Meath, they're in the Joe McDonagh Cup final. If they lose and Carlow beat Westmeath heavily, then Carlow can get in. But what do you think? Will Antrim be able to do the business, or could there be a sting in the tail yet?
Well, for the first period, this is the 3rd year of the Joe McDonagh Cup, and every single year there's been dead rubber last round games where we seem to know who's going through. There hasn't been that way maybe with relegation, but with promotion it seems to be very, very much dead rubber. Like, we're not getting promotion, but even teams reaching the final. And I remember Carlow played Westmeath in 2018, and both of those teams already knew they were going to meet in the final. Laois played Westmeath last year, it was the same thing. But this year, it's not the same thing. But barring an absolute miracle, it's going to be an Antrim and Kerry final. I do think Antrim are going to go to Meath professionally tomorrow, and I think Antrim are going to beat Meath in that match. I think Antrim are probably the best team in the competition. They'd want to get that Meath game under the belt, win that match, and prepare to play Kerry. I don't even, to be honest with you, Gerry, I didn't even realise this Westmeath Carlow match was on. There's been no buzz around Westmeath because it's practically a challenge match for Westmeath. I thought it might have been a big match for Carlow initially, but it wasn't really. I don't see a series where else is going to see Carlow get to the final, to be honest with you. But I do think they'll have every chance of beating them. If they go to Mullingar not too downbeat, like, I think that game is very much a lottery, Gerry, that Westmeath Carroll game, to be honest with you. I don't think it's fair to even try and call it, because you don't know how interested your team is going to be or anything. I don't think there's too much at stake either, so I'm not really looking forward to that Westmeath Carroll game, to be honest. But I do think Antrim will be in the Joe McDonagh Cup final come tomorrow evening.
It's certainly, you know, like, obviously Kerry are already in the final, and from an Antrim perspective, in some ways, it's like brilliant. You know, Kerry, we seem to have their number. We beat them in the league final, and we've already beat them in the Joe McDonagh Cup. So it's like, you know, beat them 3 times out of 3 this season, but it also comes in where there's a wee bit of nervousness about that as well. You know, it's like, are they going to be complacent? Are they going to be, you know, are they going to be thinking, you know, that this is already done? Is this going to be extra ammunition for Kerry? So it's interesting, you know, just to see what becomes of. Obviously, you know, there's a job to be done tomorrow, and hopefully, you know, from a purely Antrim perspective, and I don't mind admitting that I'm biased on that, that, you know, hopefully Antrim get there and play Kerry. But it'll be interesting then. It's on All-Ireland final day as well, the final. So Kerry are definitely there, and it looks like Antrim have a good chance of getting there. But Antrim have a habit of coming back, and I'm just not going to count my chickens. I'll just wait until tomorrow.
I think Kerry have a real chance of winning that match. I think Kerry are going into that final, and they definitely have a chance of beating Antrim. I know Antrim have had a number this year, but in other years, Kerry seem to have Antrim's number. So if you look at the two teams on paper, there's really not much between them with everyone fit, Gerry, to be honest. And I think Croke Park open space, that game really is a lottery. And I think Darren Gleeson will have no trouble in getting the players to believe that. And likewise, I think the Kerry players will have absolutely no fear of playing Antrim at all, to be honest, Gerry. And I do think Antrim probably at the moment are slight favorites, but I suppose Antrim have to beat Meath first at the weekend and then see how they get on against Kerry. So, but just the other game, I suppose, the Lory Meagher Cup, it's Louth and Fermanagh, and there's no point trying to hype up something that we can't hype up. Those players are putting in big work. They deserve their day in the sun. We've had debates about this before, and I suppose it's impossible to call it, Gerry. I don't want to try and call it because I don't really have the much of a follow. I lived in Louth before. There's a bit of interest in the town, but it's not as much as it should be, Gerry, to be honest with you. With a big enough county, the GAA probably needs hurling a wee bit stronger, and a county with 2 of the biggest towns in Ireland. But Fermanagh is a very rural area. They're very proud county in Gaelic football, especially. They always compete above the way. I think there's only one hurling club in Lisbella or Lisbelu, as I would pronounce it. Yeah. But that's the only hurling club in Fermanagh. So look, I'd say Louth, just from what I kind of have, I'd say Louth might edge it, but I wouldn't be overly confident either way.
It is a game where, you know, I've kind of made up my mission to find out about these games and find out about these matches. So there will be a video probably within the next hour or two. I've almost got it finished. Just need to edit it a wee bit on the game, so I'll release that later. But just kind of looking at it, like, obviously the Lory Meagher is the 5th tier of the hurling championship, but from looking at the games, it's actually by far and away the most balanced as well. You know, the teams like fair enough. You know, like, we're not going to sit here and patronise anyone and say, you know, it's a high standard of hurling. Obviously, you know, it is the lowest of the 5 championships, but at the same time, the matches have been tight. I've got like the lists here. So like Louth and Fermanagh played in the first game. Fermanagh won by a point. Then the next game was Fermanagh and Cavan, which was a draw. And then Louth and Cavan. Louth won it by, well, this is actually, I'll point this out as you know, a factor on what we've said before about these lower tier competitions. Some people have it that Louth won it by a point, and some people have it that they won it by 2. Now, most of the reports I'm seeing would have Louth's scorers is that they scored 115. So I have it that they did win it by 2 points. But you know, it does show that some places there is a certain lack of interest in this. But the 2 teams in the league this year, they both finished bottom of their respective leagues, Division 3B and Division 3A. Louth were in 3A. The game between the 2 sides, obviously, as I said, Fermanagh won it by a point, but going into the last couple of minutes, they were well behind and scored 2 goals in injury time to win the game. So from that, you're kind of looking at it and saying, you know, Louth are maybe the better side, but Down found in the Christy Ring Cup final last week that goals win games, and Kildare, you know, Down played well, there scored the goal to come on the game. So if we get that again, then obviously Fermanagh lifts the Lory Meagher. But I'll not go too much into it anymore because, as I say, I'm going to be video on it. So you were saying about Louth and a bit of interest in it. There might be something overshadowing that, and but we will touch on the football here for a minute or two. Certain Mickey Harte arrived in town, and as we said earlier, we were talking offline that the press conference was today. So what do you make of that? Were you shocked to see that he had went to Louth, or did you think that it was just a matter of where he went?
I thought it was a matter of where he went, but I didn't think there was too many places he could go either. Do you know what I said? I would have been absolutely very surprised if he didn't get back involved in football. I thought he might have got involved at club level or maybe at Sligo or something. I didn't think we'd see him involved with a different county. Like, but I put it this way: I didn't think I'd see him in the Louth job, to be honest with you, Gerry. Now, having said that, from a practical perspective, it makes sense. I suppose he can go from his base to Darver, where they train, or to Dundalk, wherever it is. It's not a long drive, especially to Dundalk, and I could roll on the motorway. So I actually thought the Antrim job would have made sense as well. I think both Antrim and Louth would have been similar jobs, Gerry. They both would have made a lot of sense, really, in some ways, in the basis that they're probably both within relatively short distance from his house. And I suppose now I'm not suggesting he was offered the Antrim job or there was any contact made, and I suppose Enda McGinley seemed to be fairly strong about going for the Antrim job, and he was his own club. He's from the same club as Harte, so maybe he didn't want to be going against McGinley if he knew McGinley was going for the job. Maybe there's something like that as well. And I saw Sligo appointed Tony McEntee, that, so maybe he was asked there. But I don't know where he was asked. But Peter Fitzpatrick actually, I think, was on LMFM, the radio. He he's a Louth chairman. He managed them in 2010 in the Leinster final against Meath, as Louth fans will never forget. But he actually said that day that if Mickey Harte is available, we're going to go for Mickey Harte. Like, he kind of basically, to paraphrase, but he had kind of promised the Louth fans that they'd have a big name manager. And to be fair to Fitzpatrick, in 2018, it wasn't him, but the Louth County Board appointed Pete McGrath as manager, who was another very high profile. Now, that didn't really work out for them, but that was a massive appointment. Pete McGrath was at the time, but probably not in the scale of Mickey Harte. But Louth seem to have ambition in appointing managers, to be honest, Gerry. And if you look at Paddy O'Shea in Westmeath in 2004, we won Leinster, Louth probably the last real high profile. Mick O'Dwyer, it mightn't have been as high. O'Dwyer was probably maybe slightly a better manager, but the thing with O'Dwyer was, Gerry, he was always going to different counties, kind of, that kind of way. So it wasn't much of a shock. But Paddy O'Shea was kind of like Mickey Harte. He wanted to stay in Kerry, didn't get his next January, and then the next week he was gone to Westmeath, and it was kind of similar enough to Mickey Harte here. But no, I think maybe to Mickey Harte's looking at from a point of view, he's taken the under-20s as well with Gavin Devlin, who's his trusted lieutenant. And to be honest with you, Gerry, those guys, that they work well together. And like, I just think he's not. Mickey Harte isn't going to go in and do this half-heartedly. He's going to go in and try and do it to the best of his ability. So he's taking the senior under-20s. He's serious. He's very serious about this position. He is, and I do think that he's probably looking at it from the point of view that Louth are in Division 4. The only way is up. They probably have a squad of good enough players to win that next year. It's not beyond the range of possibility that Louth could be in Division 2. They got promoted in 2017 and went straight back down, but they could be in Division 2. But also, and maybe this is if he was offered Antrim, and I'm not saying he was anywhere near to do any connection with Antrim, but there's a very, very realistic chance for Louth to win a few games in the Leinster Championship. Now, would they beat Dublin? No, there's no chance at the moment that this Louth team would ever would be anywhere near beating Dublin. But it's not beyond the range of possibility that they beat any of the other 9 counties who compete in the Leinster Championship. So I'd say he's probably looking there that. Just say for just the first year now, I think they're regionalising the league, so I don't know how it's going to plan out that way. But like for the first year, they could get promoted out of Division 4 and have a wee run in the Leinster Championship. And I suppose there's this new Tier 2 Tailteann Cup as well coming in, and maybe he's looking that they could do well in that. So no, I think it's a good move, and I don't think there wasn't that many jobs, Gerry, that would have made sense for Mickey Harte, like from a practical perspective, because if he was whatever job is going to be vacant in Ulster, like if he's going to go to one of the big hitters in Ulster, he's going against Tyrone, probably one of Tyrone's biggest rivals. Just say if he managed, maybe just say for argument's sake, Donegal, Monaghan, Derry, or Armagh, maybe for example. And well, none of those jobs are really vacant at the moment either. And I suppose so this would probably the one that would have made sense would have been the Louth job. And I suppose if you look at the other jobs, like what counties could realistically win All-Ireland, if you're looking at Galway, Mayo, and those counties, they don't need managers at the moment, and it's an awful long drive from Ballygawley, and that kind of way. So there probably isn't a huge array of options there for her but in that sense. But no, Louth makes sense from a practical perspective, and I can see it definitely working out.
I think it's you have to credit the Louth County Board. It's an ambitious move from them, and I also think it's the fact that he's the under-20s. It's forward thinking in that Mickey Harte is in his kind of late 60s, so he's probably not going to be there for much more past his 3-year contract here, but if he's with the under-20s, he can lay the foundations, to improve the Louth team. And as you say, it is really a case of the only way is up, from Division 4. Obviously, we'll wait and see what way they love a good mess about with divisions, but sort of on paper, it looks like he'll certainly be going up against his old player in McGinley at Antrim. But we'll see. We'll see what becomes of that. I think we've lost Conor there for a moment, but I think we're mostly through everything anyway. So
yeah, sorry, back out. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we were just saying that obviously with the Louth job, it's kind of, as you said, like he's probably not going to knock the dubs off and draw dependent in championships and stuff. He could certainly if he can lift the standards high enough to take them up. League progress is probably the realistic aim and what they'll be looking for in life. But what do you make then? Obviously Sligo have appointed Tony McEntee. So what do you think of that as well?
Yeah, it was Tyrone have appointed as well, and I suppose Antrim have appointed. We'll have a chat about all those in a second. But yeah, Tony McEntee is a great appointment for Sligo. It's an ambitious coach. He was coaching Crossmaglen when they won 2 All-Ireland as a manager, and he was coaching Mayo with Stephen Rutherford there and was very well to start in Mayo whilst Tony McEntee. So I think it's a great appointment for Sligo. I think it shows a bit of ambition in Sligo, to be honest, Gerry. And I think that's where there's ambition kind of being shown by these counties to get high-profile coaches in. And I think McEntee is definitely an example of that progressive, ambitious coach. And like if you look at it as well, Gerry, they're in Division 4 at the moment, Sligo. So like again, a bit like Louth, the only way probably is up, and a bit like Louth, they probably have the players to get out of Division 4 at the moment. They have decent underage. They're really in transition. They kind of seem to have. They used to have a good senior squad, and they didn't seem. And then they seemed a few lads seemed to kind of wilt by the wayside and didn't retire or whatever. And they didn't really seem to replace them. But there's a bit of players coming now in Sligo at the moment. There is, and they could be a wee bit stronger in the next years. And I think that it's good that they have a coach like Tony McEntee coming down, and there's no excuses. That was why they wouldn't be doing so well.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, then Tyrone we kind of knew like it was always kind of seemed to be from as soon as Hart left, it seemed that Fergal Logan was going to be the one to replace him, and Brian Dooher is also on that managerial ticket then, so it seems like it's a joint managers. I think they both, was it minors or under 21s, they had success, those two. Personally, I'm delighted to see Brian Dooher. Brian Dooher was one of the players that played for that Tyrone team that, like, he just was the obviously Canavan, got the headlines, and there was like Owen Mulligan got the headlines and Sean Kavanagh, but to me Dooher was the glue that stuck it all together. And I thought he was a brilliant player, so it's interesting to see how well he does in coaching. But were you surprised to see Dooher as joint manager, or did you think he might have slipped into the back room somewhere, or what way did you see that working?
Well, Gerry, what we were being told, Tyrone seems to be a county where it seems to be, a lot of stuff seems to be leaked out. It seemed to be leaked out that Hart wasn't going to be staying on, and this seemed to have been leaked out as well. So there seems to be a few leaks coming from Tyrone at the moment. But I think that's the only thing we probably got caught a bit out more by was the joint manager approach that they went with there. But I think I think Dooher was always going to be involved. So whether his role changes much or not, I don't know, Gerry, to be honest, whether this is going to change or not. But Fergal Logan is a good choice from Tyrone. He won the All-Ireland with the under-15s. There's a good structures in Tyrone. They've good underage teams, and they're definitely a team with a lot of talent and a lot of potential to look forward to. But I think Collie Holmes was doing a bit with Dungannon last year, and they obviously won a championship against all the odds. So he's going in there with them as well. That's a good appointment. And Peter Donnelly was a highly sought strength and conditioning coach, and he went to Tyrone, then he went to Ulster Rugby, they lost him, but then he went and coached Monaghan as well. But he's obviously gone from Monaghan now, and he's going back to coach Tyrone. So yeah, look, it's a lot to be looking forward to from a Tyrone perspective, and hopefully for their own sake they can push on. I think that obviously they want to stay in Division 1 in the league. I think I'm reading that the leagues are going to be split into 2 in Division 1, and all the 4 divisions are going to be split into 2. So with the COVID, so that would put Tyrone, Donegal, Armagh, Monaghan as the 4 Ulster teams. And I presume if they're going to be split into 2, it's going to be done on a geographical basis. So that would the likelihood would be then it would be Tyrone, Monaghan, Donegal, and Armagh in the 1B group with 2 of those teams. I don't know how it's going to work in Division 1, but I think the relegation, what they're going to do is going to be the bottom 2 teams are going to be in the relegation playoff, and 2 teams go down, and then whoever the 2 losers are from the 2 divisions. There's a pity that the leagues are being split up, but I think none of that is confirmed yet. I think it could be maybe rubber stamp tomorrow at a meeting, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it's a lot to look forward to from a Tyrone perspective. And just going through the other managers and counties, I think that Antrim have Enda McGinley in there, another very good appointment for Antrim. Maybe it was a wee bit surprised it wasn't more of a push for Harte, but McGinley seemed to be fairly headstrong and going for the job. So as I mentioned there, maybe Harte didn't want to go against him because McGinley was a strong lieutenant of his, and also he's a club man of very good here, where Harte's obviously a great thing involved. But no, that's a very positive appointment from an Antrim perspective as well. And I suppose it is a pity that Division 4 especially is going to be split up, because it would be Tony McEntee, Enda McGinley and Mickey Harte all in Division 4, and it would make a division that normally nobody would give an F about, Gerry, to be a division where people suddenly the coverage is hugely interested. It'd be like in the hurling, if you had maybe Brian Cody and maybe Henry Shefflin and someone like Brendan Cummins or someone all managing Warwickshire, or managing Leitrim hurlers or something, it would. But it's a pity for those counties. But I suppose for the year that's in it, hopefully now that it all goes ahead smoothly. But just going back on the hurling this weekend before we finish, Gerry, just I suppose lastly, Eddie Brennan has left the Laois job as well. That's the one hurling news from the weekend there before we let the users go, and that's a big, huge loss for Laois. And obviously there was the whole off the record saga there, but whether that contributed or not, I don't know. But the only thing I do know is it's a big loss for Laois hurling going forward in the long term, and they do very, very well to replace him.
Do you see a landing spot for Eddie Brennan? I see like a couple of people already, or nominating their counties, just fans and stuff. Nobody really has a say, but. Do you see any obvious spot where he might land?
I don't at the moment. I don't like talking about managers going for jobs when there's someone else already in a job. To be honest with you, I think it's probably slightly disrespectful. But a lot of those hurling counties, some of them especially, it's very much we're only going to give our own lads the job kind of way. They wouldn't go outside. So it means for a hurling manager, the opportunities may not be as plentiful as maybe the football. I think in the football, there's more teams maybe ready to make a breakthrough, like you saw with Mick O'Dwyer there, like Kildare and Laois were on the border and they could have appointed a carry-on, but some counties would never dream of putting in what they call an outsider in charge, and I think that there's actually a lot of counties in that bracket. Now, having said that, this championship is probably a wee bit different in the base. Like Galway managed by a Limerick man tomorrow, and Tipperary or Waterford even are managed by a Tipperary man, and like if you look at the other counties in Ireland, Wexford had a more management this year, so. It's not maybe is that Dublin have a Galway person, but it's not maybe. But I think that's silly attitude, Gerry. I think often an outsider can be what's needed in the camp, that kind of way. But no, Eddie Brennan, I think though he'd be suited to any county job really, Gerry. And I suppose if I see the landing spot for him, it could be in the Kilkenny hurlers if Cody decides to go. But I think that's speculating an awful lot. And there is no guarantee that Cody will decide to step away. But I suppose there's a time that every manager, like no manager is going to be managing a team forever either. So that's another thing. But when Cody goes, it'll be some shock to see someone else in the line. But Fergal, Logan, I suppose these poison chalices, they can be following a very good coach. Now, Dessie Farrell hasn't found it too difficult to Dublin yet now. But yeah, so hopefully, I see any manager who comes in after a successful coach is always going to be difficult. But we'll see how it pans out anyway. And enjoy, I suppose, the games this weekend, just before we go into it, I'm going to just go with Kilkenny and Limerick. But nearly every team I've gone for in recent times seems to have lost, so it's probably good news that for Galway and Waterford fans that I'm going against them.
So you're saying what you're saying there is that they're going to beat Antrim, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, that's great. Thanks. My thanks as always to Conor. It's always a great insight to hear from him and what he has to say in the matches. So thanks as always. We touched on the football in this as well, because there's no matches, but we'll be back with the football properly next week ahead of the semi-finals. So thanks to Conor, thanks to everybody that's watching, and enjoy the games this weekend. Thanks very much.